Let's dive right into something truly profound today. Welcome to This Explainer, where we are unpacking the incredibly moving teachings of the brilliant Brazilian philosopher and educator Mario Sergio Cortella. We've got a fantastic journey ahead of us, exploring a whole new perspective on life, legacy, and what it actually takes to leave a real mark on this world.
I want to jump straight into the absolute core of our explainer today. Benjamin Disraeli once said, "Life is too short to be small." Cortella anchors his entire philosophy right there on that incredibly provocative thought. I mean, it hits you, doesn't it? Our existence is undeniably finite. We're all on a ticking clock here. So the ultimate question we have to ask ourselves is, how do we make sure our lives don't just slip away into insignificance? How do we actively prevent our own lives from shrinking?
So, Section 1, the power of active hope, an active stance on life. Now, what's great about Cortella is how he takes these massive, heavy concepts and grounds them in everyday stories. For instance, he talks about his dad. When Cortella was a kid growing up in Londrina, which back then was just a town full of dirt roads, his dad drove this canvas-top Jeep. He'd come home at 6:30 every evening completely covered in dust, sweating in the infernal heat, with literally only the whites of his eyes showing. But you know what? When that Jeep broke down, instead of walking through the door cursing and complaining, he'd find this unbelievable sense of gratitude. He'd actually say, "Look how much God loves me. The Jeep broke down, but hey, at least it isn't raining." He wasn't ignoring the problem. He was taking this incredibly active, resilient stance against the everyday messiness of life. And that beautifully illustrates a distinction brought up by the renowned educator Paulo Freire. In Portuguese, there's this fascinating linguistic contrast. On one hand, you have the word esperar, which basically means to wait. It's a passive kind of hope. It's sitting back, crossing your fingers, and saying, well, I hope it works out. But on the flip side, you have esperançar, and this is an action verb. True hope, the kind that actually transforms a life, isn't just waiting around for the storm to pass. It's actively pursuing, working, and joining together with others to build a shelter. So let's really lock in on this definition of esperançar. To go after, to join together, to not give up. It is the absolute refusal to let despair win. When life throws serious turbulence your way, and let's be honest, it absolutely will, this active hope is your primary tool. It's the exact mechanism we use to prevent our lives from becoming small.
All right, moving to Section 2, a life that isn't small, what it means to fully exist. Because avoiding a small life isn't necessarily about getting your name plastered in history books. It's much more about actively avoiding a timeline that is just banal, superficial, or frankly, useless.
Cortella frames this perfectly with a story from a conference. He was speaking to this massive audience of 2,000 nurses. At the very end, a nurse grabs the microphone and hits him with this incredibly heavy challenge. She asks, "Professor, what do you want people to say at your wake?" Cortella says he gave this long, highly philosophical, academic answer, dropping names like Plato, Aristotle, and Heraclitus. But then, he cleverly turned the question right back to her, demanding that she pause and reflect on her own ultimate end.
Her answer, it was absolutely brilliant. She looked at him and said, "I want them to say, wow, she's moving." It is such a perfect, hilarious punchline. But if you think about it, the raw vitality behind that joke is stunning. It perfectly balances the heavy, looming reality of our mortality with this unadulterated, pure desire just to live.
Because we really have to face the math here. 75. That's roughly the average lifespan today. Now, when you're 20, 75 feels like it's an eternity away. There's no rush, right? But as Cortella points out, when you pass 60, you really start noticing how fast the clock is ticking. He even jokes about renewing his credit card and suddenly realizing the card's expiration date was further out than his own might be. It's funny, sure, but it grounds this entire philosophy in stark reality. Time is short. Which brings us to this incredibly powerful quote by the Brazilian thinker Barão de Traré, "The only thing you take from life is the life you lead." Pay close attention to the phrasing there. It's not the life that leads you, it's the life you lead. You are entirely in the driver's seat. You're responsible for the weight, the significance, and the direction of your own journey. And that includes exactly how you handle the bumps along the way. What's really fascinating here is this concept Cortella refers to as daily deaths. You see, we don't just stop living when our biology finally gives out. We actually suffer these daily deaths whenever we surrender. I'm talking about the death of hope, the death of affection, when we lose our capacity for love or that crucial sense of solidarity with others. That is when we truly stop living, even if our hearts are still beating. That takes us to Section 3, fear and legacy, the difference between being immortal and being eternal.
Now we're going to tackle physical mortality head-on, contrasting the undeniable biological fact of death with the permanence of the legacy we actually build. Cortella draws a very sharp distinction here between death, which is just an inevitable biological fact, and what he calls the crossing. He isn't actually worried about the literal end. Death comes for all of us. He even tells this great story about going to the funeral of his friend, the writer João Ubaldo Ribeiro. His friend had completely cleaned up his diet and stopped drinking right before he passed away, and Cortella joked that they were literally burying a healthy corpse. The point he's making is that death is just biology. What actually matters is the crossing. It's the quality, the depth, and the meaning of the life we lead before that inevitable fact arrives.
So, think about this for a second. What would my epitaph be? Cortella recalls that when he was a kid, growing up in a town that didn't even have television yet, he would just sit around at night and ponder exactly this. What inscription is going to mark my grave? It's a really profound exercise because it forces you to look at your life right now and ask what you are truly leaving behind. Years later, Cortella finally decided on his epitaph, only to discover that his absolute favorite poet, Mario Quintana, had chosen the exact same one. I am not here. It is such a genius epitaph. Why? Because it sends a clear signal that human existence is not merely physical material sitting in a box. If you lived a life that wasn't small, you aren't in that grave. So then, how does someone achieve eternity without immortality? If he's not in the grave, where is he? Well, Mario Quintana is in the friendship he shared. He is in the solidarity he freely offered to others. He is alive in the fraternity he built and in the happiness he dreamed of. Our true presence completely outlives our physical bodies through our actions and the genuine connections we make with others. Ultimately, that is how you become eternal. And here we are at Section 4, Famous versus Important, the true measure of a life. This distinction is so crucial right now because it directly challenges our modern obsession with visibility, chasing followers, and seeking fleeting attention. I really want you to process this rhetorical question. It's actually the title right on the cover of one of Cortella's books. If you didn't exist, who would miss you? Or, to put it even more accurately, what gap would your absence leave in the world? It forces us to stop and evaluate the actual, tangible impact of our daily presence. Let's look at these two concepts side by side. Being famous? That simply means being known by a lot of people. It's totally fleeting. You can appear on a reality TV show one week and society completely forgets you the next. But being important? That means you leave an immense gap when you're gone. A completely unknown hospital nurse, quietly caring for a patient in a coma day in and day out, is infinitely more important than a passing celebrity. They are a permanent, fundamental presence to someone's existence.
The etymology behind this is just fascinating. The word important actually comes from Latin, meaning to import or to carry inside. You become important when someone imports you into their life, when they carry you in their memory, in their affection, in their daily habits. Your legacy is, quite literally, about being carried within other people. Cortella connects us right back to the archaic Greek root for death, leitos, which is also the root for forgetting, like the mythological river Lethe. To die is to be forgotten. As long as someone out there remembers you, as long as someone laughs at a goofy joke you used to tell, or sheds a tear because they miss you, you are still alive. You've completely avoided that final death because you were imported by someone else. As we wrap up this explainer, Cortella shares this deeply profound self-reflection from Rabbi Hillel. It perfectly summarizes everything we've been talking about regarding personal responsibility and communal legacy. First, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? You absolutely have to take care of your own journey. Second, if I am only for myself, what am I? And notice he uses the word what instead of who, because if you only ever live for yourself, you essentially diminish your own humanity. And third, if not now, when? When are you going to stop passively waiting and start actively hoping? When are you going to step up and ensure your life isn't banal? Remember, life is far too short to be small. So I'll leave you with this. If not now, when?